developer at the Center for Teaching and Learning. My portfolio includes programming to support globalization of courses, programs, and curriculum in a general concept. And part of that is to initiate conversations within our teaching community to discuss how we can work individually and work together to best support our international and culturally diverse students. So they will enjoy their academic journey here at Queen's and achieve academic success. So a little bit more about myself. I am originally from China and I speak English as my second language. I grew up speaking a dialect that is very close to Mandarin, but also different in many ways. So I even speak Mandarin with a slight accent, and sometimes my friends will tease me. I moved to Canada in 2012 as an international student and became a Canadian permanent resident in 2018. So this lived experience actually inspired me to delve into the challenges encountered by students from diverse cultural, linguistic, and educational backgrounds, whereby I also embarked on my journey to study cultural diversity and explore internationalization of the curriculum in higher education. I am very excited to have you all in the session today. Thank you for coming, and I look forward to discussing this topic with you. I have no doubt that you come to the session today with knowledge and experience in supporting international students. I hope to engage you in the session as much as I can, so we will all learn from each other. Please feel free to communicate with me and with each other as we process in today's session. Please feel free to ask questions, share your opinions, or make a comments as we go. If you feel comfortable, please always unmute yourself or raise your hand, then I can invite you. Or if you feel more comfortable using a live chat, please feel free to do it as well. So to welcome you to the session today, I would like to make a land acknowledgement that Queen's University is situated on traditional Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee territory. I appreciate the four directions teaching originated in the Haudenosaunee Nation that guides us to touch and tap into the four essential aspects of teaching and learning in terms of emotional, physical, mental, and spirituality, because I also come from a cultural background where holism is valued and respected. So I'm also a newcomer to this land. I only moved to Kingston in July. So I look forward to further exploring and learning from this land and from our Indigenous communities. Okay, so before we officially begin the session, here are a few housekeeping items I would like to share with you. Firstly, this session only serves as an introduction and overview of the topic because of a time limitation. An hour and a half really is a very short time to address such a broad but also complicated topic. So I would encourage everybody, including myself, to keep exploring this topic when the session's over, so as to find our own best practices in supporting international and culturally diverse students. And another thing is, you may notice as we process, some of the challenges we're exploring today may not be unique to international students, but also shared by many other student groups. For example, first-generation college students, students from diverse high school experiences, Francophone students, new immigrant students, or students from our Indigenous communities, and so forth. So I guess the goal of the session really is to initiate a conversation within our community to discuss how to help all students who are struggling in academic study achieve success. Okay, I hope I'm not too ambitious. So you will have access to the PowerPoint after the session, so you don't need to worry about jotting down all the notes. My colleague Caitlin will send out a follow-up email with the PowerPoint and the evaluation form, so I can get some feedback from you to help me do better in my next offering and in my future programming. So thank you so much, everyone. Let's begin the session. Okay, at the very beginning, I would like to ask you a very quick question related to the changing demographics. Okay, so I wonder if you know how many international students are there in Canada, in Ontario, and at Queens. Okay, so I would like to encourage you to post a few numbers in the chat. If you do know the answers, great. If you don't, I hope you can take a quick guess. Okay, so how many international students do you think are there in Canada, in Ontario, and at Queens? So if you can please post in the chat, maybe write C dash a number and then O dash a number and Q dash a number to indicate the different numbers in Canada, in Ontario, and at Queens. That will be great. Okay, I'm gonna pause so you can think about it and share some of your thoughts. Okay, so we have 500,000 in Canada. That's a very reasonable guess, I think. Okay, my colleague Yasmin says 900,000 in Canada, 300,000 in Ontario, 3,000 at Queens. Okay, in Canada, I have 2 million. Okay, at Queens, I have 2,000. Okay, how about others in the session today? How many international students do you think we have? So it's not about right or wrong, right? Just basically activity to get our thinking started. Okay. Camilo says Canada, there's 700,000, Ontario, 500,000, Queens, 3,000, Queens, 2,500, and never enough. Okay. Okay. Irina says we have 2,000 to 3,000 at Queens, a very fair guess as well. Steven says we have 250,000 in Canada, in Ontario, 10,000 at Queens, 2,500. Okay, for sure. Thank you so much for your engagement and your numbers in the chat. Let me quickly share some statistics. So here, based on the Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada report, there were over 500,000 international students in Canada studying at all levels of education in the year of 2020. And this number actually dropped from over 330,000 in 2019. So we had more in 2019 and number dropped. Okay, so this is about how many we have in Canada in general. And to answer the question, where do international students go in Canada? So this image indicates our province takes almost half of the international students, which is over 240,000. And this number also dropped from over 300,000 in 2019. So a lot of you did a good job either knowing the answers or guessing the numbers. So as we can see here, BC has the second biggest number of the international students, and the Quebec is ranked the third. Okay, so this is about the provinces and how many international students are there. And lastly, let's check our Queens. Okay, so we have over 3,500 international students according to our enrollment report 2020 to 2021, which is about 13.6% of the overall student population. And they actually come from over 106 countries and regions around the world. In 2019, we had over 3,800 international students, and they were from over 120 countries. And the number in 2019 was about 15.4% of the overall student population. So this is how many we have in the year of 2020. And by speaking of the numbers, I guess I can't really ignore the elephant in the room by not acknowledging our intention of enrolling international students at an increasing number each year is revenue seeking in nature, peeling off many other purposes we may have around it. Okay, as we probably all heard at some point that we're not making as much revenue institution-wide as well as nationwide since the outbreak of COVID, because we had less international students registered to our programs. Okay, so now Canada is actually ranked the third globally in attracting international students behind the US and Australia. So this may make us feel pretty proud. I'm also wondering how many of international students' challenges and their struggles were heard or responded. I had a conversation with a few colleagues who mentioned that at Queen's, our School of Graduate Studies actually had proposed to remove the extra fee international students have to pay for their education here. So all graduate students will pay the same tuition at a different program level. I think this is a very positive move that we're making. I'm not sure if it is already in practice. So if you happen to know more about it, please feel free to share with us. Are we charging every graduate student the same, or it's still in progress? Okay. I see there are some questions in the chat. Does the Queen's number include international students currently living in their home countries? This is a very good question. So I got this number based on the enrollment reports. It doesn't really tell us if they are back in Canada or they should still be around the world. My guess, I might be wrong, is they include all the students who registered to the programs in the year of 2020. So they might be on our campus or they might be still in their home country. So I guess, except for the positive move we're making campus-wide, there is definitely something more we can do. Whenever I reflect on my own experience as a former international student, together with my conversations with many international students, both undergraduate and graduate, I think it is fair for international students to expect us as educators and together as the university to do better in supporting them. This is the core reason for me to put together the session today to initiate this critical conversation. Okay, and also my colleague Yasmin shared international graduate students started paying domestic fee this September, which really is a positive move we made. So to move on with our session today, the learning outcome includes we're going to explore the anticipated challenges international students may encounter learning in the quote unquote Canadian academic context. I think it is more accurate for us to say the specific academic context we set up in our own courses because there's no one unified academic context that we all follow. Okay, so we're also going to identify educational strategies to help international students overcome at least some of the anticipated challenges, if not all of them. Okay. Sorry, there's a delay in the animation of my PowerPoint. So after we walk out of the session, I hope we're all inspired to implement at least one new strategy we never tried before to support our international and culturally diverse students in own practices. Okay, so this is going to be something we're going to cover in this session today. Okay, to explore the challenges international students encounter learning in our specific academic context, I would like to invite you to participate in a simulation activity. Okay, let's suppose that we're accepted by a university in a country where our mother tongue is not spoken. What might be the academic and non-academic challenges we will encounter in our academic journey there? Okay, I am pretty sure some of us already had such experience. like myself and my colleague, Yasmin here. And I would like to encourage those of us to generously share the challenges we have encountered with the rest of the group. So if you could please go to www.mentee.com, either using your smartphone or any other device available, and enter the code 5725-7932. So you will access the activity. You will be able to post your answers there, and you can post as many times as you would like to. And we have about...
You muted yourself.
Okay, sorry. So please just go to www.mentee.com and enter the code there, and you will be able to post your answers there. And you can post as many times as you want to, and we have about 4 or 5 minutes for this activity. So I hope the instruction is clear. I don't know why I muted myself by accident. I'm going to switch my screen over to the activity so we can all see the answers that come in. Okay, just give me 1 quick second here. Okay, I just switched my screen over to the activity. Please let me know if you are not able to see the answers or the Mentimeter activity. I see the answers here. Finding accommodation, yes. I actually had a lot of challenges finding my residence in Kingston if I moved over. So this might be a shared challenge. Transportation, exactly. Social isolation, especially if you experience COVID in a country where you don't have your family or friends around you. This may cause a lot of challenges for sure. Participation in group projects, yes, that is a challenge shared by many of us. Not understanding technical language, yes, you read my mind. This is a challenge I still share at this point. I always get thrown off by all the acronyms people use, acronyms like QSEC, QFA, UNQ. So I'm still learning as a new member of Queen's community. Okay, challenge navigating medical care and mental health support. Exactly. Yes, thank you so much for posting that. We also have may need more time to complete assignments because of language. Exactly. I think for me, I'm a slow reader. I usually takes 2 or 3 more times compared with some of my colleagues who speak English as a first language to finish a reading. So this is also a challenge I share. I feel like you all know a lot about the challenges. I'm very proud. I have found difficult to express myself in a non-academic environment, describing my feelings, where to get things, how to name objects, etc. Exactly, I also share this challenge. I have also found difficult to hear people use a lot of, yes, acronyms, short-term words, exactly. Navigating daily activities such as grocery shopping, especially in winter, when it's snowing and really cold, finding housing, once again, speaking with prospective landlords, finding the correct university office to address my problem exactly, finding TA positions and other paid employment, financial support is one big thing on top of academic study and many other things. So I do feel you. Accessing money, transferring money from home, yes. Language barriers and cultural barriers, exactly. Being able to make jokes, communicating, yes. I oftentimes find I might have a weird sense of humor in this context. I think I'm getting better. I'm still trying. Navigating romantic and social relationships with other students, yes. Language and academic writing. Homesickness, yes, thank you for saying this. I wasn't able to go home ever since the outbreak of COVID. So I really miss my family and friends. So I would really hope I can go back at least end of next year. Composing essays that are grammatically correct and have a good flow, explaining complex ideas, understanding some of the terms used. So academic writing is also a big challenge international students face, especially the ones who do not speak English as the first language. Frustration at not being as quick to respond to friends and peers, feeling stupid or at least different in your other languages. Yes, my strategy is whenever I felt myself lost ability to communicate, I'll always say, oh, wait for a minute, let me find my English back. So I do this all the time when I'm not able to think straight. Okay, thank you so much for your contribution and engagement. I really appreciate all the answers you typed in. I apologize if I didn't mention your answers, but I will download this activity and I'll send a copy to everyone together with my PowerPoint. So just give me one quick second to switch back to the PowerPoint and continue our conversation. Okay, so I have already switched my screen back. Please let me know if you cannot see it. There's nothing on the PowerPoint yet. Okay, so to help us explore the anticipated challenges in a more structured way, I have adopted YASO's community cultural wealth model for visual support because I am a very visual person myself. Okay, so the first and the foremost challenge, as we have already identified in activity, is the linguistic challenge. Because as I already quickly mentioned, a lot of international students, including myself, do not speak English as their mother tongue. Okay, so here is another important information to share with you. According to scholar comments, they are in general two phases individuals go through while developing a language, including the first language. Okay, the first phase, we develop the basic interpersonal communication skills, aka BICS, B-I-C-S, so which is the contextualized language of everyday conversation that is required through interactions at school, at work, and in various social contexts. It usually takes about 1 to 2 years for individuals to develop some basics of BICS, okay? And BICS is also what the language proficiency tests, such as IELTS or TOEFL, usually based on. I'm sure most of us have already known that non-native English speakers need to take one of those language proficiency exams and reach certain level to be able to qualify for education in Canada and many other English-speaking countries. So I have taken IELTS before. International English Language Test System. Okay, that's something for the acronym. Okay, so however, BICS alone doesn't suffice the requirement for academic studies. Therefore, individuals will go through the second phase to develop cognitive academic language proficiency, also called CALP, C-A-L-P, which is the decontextualized academic language that is required to perform successfully in specific academic environments. So if you are not majored in that area, you might not know the terms they use, the vocabulary, or some of their regulations in use of the language. Okay, so it usually takes a bit more time, 5 to 7 years, or even longer for people to develop CALP at a solid foundation. Okay, and BICS is the basis for CALP. If you have a weaker basic interpersonal communication skill, it will be harder for you to develop the cognitive academic language proficiency. Okay, so this also helps us understand why some international students who passed the language proficiency test, but also struggle in academic studies. There's so much more for them to learn, okay? Although academic English is no one's mother tongue, it is indeed more challenging for students who are non-native English speakers to develop the academic language, as they are still in the process of developing the basic interpersonal communication skills, okay? Okay, so the second challenge is the familial challenge, which is related to the beliefs, worldviews, knowledge, and self-identity our students nurtured in pre-Queen's experience that may become blockers in their learning process. So we will talk a bit more about this later in the session. And the third challenge we also covered very well in the activity is the social challenge, which refers to the loss of social and personal connections, networks, and community resources when our students moved across borders for education. It usually takes a longer time for people to build new network and relationships. And there is some stats from research indicating that in Canada, domestic students reported only 11% of their friends were international students. And on the other hand, 56% of international students claimed to have not even one Canadian friend. So the gap is actually even bigger than we might have expected in terms of the interactions and relationships between the so-called domestic and international students. Okay, so the navigational challenge is about the absence of support in newcomer students' development of skills and abilities required to maneuver within the unfamiliar academic and non-academic environment, as we also covered in our activity. And the next one is called aspirational challenge, which speaks to how our students may lose motivation when they encountered with constant academic and non-academic difficulties and frustrations without timely help or support. Okay, and the last challenge is resistance. Okay, as a challenge, resistance addresses the reactions international students may put out as a response to the biases or discriminations that may emerge in their learning process. Sometimes their disengagement in class may be another display of resistance to inequity or unfairness. So if we realize some international students are really not engaging, this is because they're not feeling included in the class. They probably feel they're not as important. So we'll also talk a bit more about this challenge later in the session. Okay, so to quickly reiterate what I mentioned at the beginning of the session, these challenges, as we have already noticed, are not unique to international students, but also to many other student groups, such as Indigenous students, Francophone students, we can all name a few. Okay, therefore, I would like to reiterate that by supporting international students as educators, we're aiming to support all students who are struggling in academic studies. Okay, so I'm checking the chat right now, seeing there seems to be a delay between my presentation and the Zoom share screen. Oh, I apologize for that. I hope it's getting better now. If not, please let me know. I will just reshare my screen. So hopefully that helps. Okay. So please feel free to let me know if you have any questions, or if you are an international student yourself, you think there's something that's missing from my content I prepared, please feel free to share with the whole group. I would like to hear from you and learn from you as well. Okay, questions are welcome, comments are welcome. Anything you want to share will be highly appreciated. So now we talked about the challenges. Okay, so I think this provides us a great segue to start thinking of what we could do individually and as a group to support our international and culturally diverse students. Okay, so I'm going to share in the session a student success framework as a conceptual framework or conceptual guidance of our strategies and practices. So this framework is adopted from Professor Lizio's 5 senses of success model. And I'm pretty sure some of you might have already heard or learned about it. This whole model advocates that student success at the university level is depending on the development of a few senses. Okay, so first of all, students need to develop a sense of connection, which enables them to experience positive and meaningful relationships with peers, also receive help and support from instructors, and make best use of the university services as well as resources. So how to help our students make this meaningful relationship, making this connection will be something we need to contemplate as instructors and educators. Okay. Secondly, a sense of resourcefulness helps students understand university policies and procedures, orient physical or online learning environments, and also manage commitments to study and to the many other aspects of life. Thirdly, students need to develop a sense of purpose, whereby to understand the rationale and structure of the curriculum. So as adult learners, when they understand the reasons of doing something, they always feel more motivated to do it and will be able to do it, perform it at a better level. Okay. They also need to know their diversity actually helps enrich the course, because their prior knowledge, experiences, and perspectives can be used as sources for learning. And also it's important for them to develop a sense of future career direction and establish a professional identity in a subject field. So to help them understand, when you are learning, you are also trying to build your future career and also maybe use university education as an opportunity for personal growth. So to not achieve academic success, but also grow as a person. Okay. Fourthly, to establish a sense of competence that helps our students develop skills for effective and respectful intercultural interactions, which is always a challenge in the teaching and learning practices. And also it's important for our students to feel capable and confident to make a positive influence in the class and in the communities. And we also need to appreciate our already developed learning capability and also adopt new skill sets as well as acquire new knowledge. The fifth one is about academic culture. Okay, it is important for our students to understand the Canadian concept of academic integrity, because we may have students coming from a different educational background where academic integrity is explained or endorsed very differently. So our students also need to develop skills to avoid misconducts or academic departures. And it's our job to help them do not also understand the new concept, but also develop new skills specifically for our contexts. It's also important for them to be clear about what is expected as a student and what can be expected of the instructor. Understand the way in which studying in this course is different from their previous learning experiences, and also work towards independent and self-directed learners. So that's something we need to help them understand or build a skill or develop into. So the Professor Lizio's framework only includes the 5 components. The 6th one is a new component I developed together with my colleague Yasmin. So it is a sense of educational equity, because as we mentioned in their challenge, they may encounter biases, discriminations, unfairness. So a sense of equity is also important for our international students. So this requires us to recognize and appreciate the diverse ways of being, thinking, and knowing our students bring into our class, and value and respond effectively to the cultural diversity and multiplicity of identities. So Yasmin told me multiplicity of identities means international students are not just international students. They may also identify themselves as queer, neurodivergent, or disabled as examples, right? So there is always a variety of ways they see themselves beyond the color of the passport. So this is also said intelligently by Yasmin. So I'm using this to share with us. So they're beyond their passport. They are a whole package of different diversities and identities. Okay, so I guess it's also important for us to ensure personal and social circumstances do not impede our students in their learning experience, nor prevent them from achieving success. So following this framework, we are able to better respond to international students' needs, expectations, to better help them overcome the challenges, at least some of the challenges in our own practice. So although this is a very valuable and rich component and framework, it's challenging for us to go in depth with all 6 components in one session. So I will need to focus on some of the important overarching tones of the framework. So there is a question in the chat. Is there a difference between the challenges international graduate students face versus undergraduate students, except, of course, to their prior experience in academic environments? Okay, so before I answer this question, I want to offer everybody in the session a chance to also think of this question. As I mentioned, I want to learn from you as well. So I wonder if anybody in the group today feels like answering these questions before I offer some of my thoughts. I'm going to pause for a while. Okay, I'm going to invite some of you to share. If I pronounce your name wrong, please don't be offended. Just correct me. Jermaine.
Hi, do I do this by voice or should I type it in the chat? What works best for you?
Yeah, whichever feels most comfortable for you. Please feel free to share verbally. It's nice to see you.
Thank you. And thanks so much for this framework. It's been very informative. As somebody who has been an international student a couple of times, and I think part of the thing around like this idea of academic environment is also this cultural piece where it is something that I've learned by being around a lot of international students and being within Canada, is that there is so much nuance to how much cultural learning you undergo before coming to tertiary education, and how that impacts, you know, just how you relate to your peers and some of the barriers and the anxieties as well around, you know, how do you initiate conversations? How do you maintain relationships? And when we look at sort of learning and university as this comprehensive, multifaceted experience that isn't just about, you know, the grades, but how all these things can end up compounding. And when you were mentioning on that framework, some of these different pieces around, you know, the student-to-student relationship, student-to-instructor relationship, and even how people feel comfortable advocating for themselves when issues arise, whether in group projects or in classrooms. Oftentimes it can be really challenging for international students, like it was even for myself at times, to really feel as though they can raise issues, especially when, and this is always a recurring joke among some of my international student friends, how we're just terrified of being deported or just terrified of kind of like ever engaging in situations that will impact our status in Canada.
Thank you so much for sharing. And I can't stop nodding while you were sharing because I can relate to everything you said. I think those are important voices for us to hear and also for our community to hear. I've noticed, Valerie, you had your hands up. Do you want to quickly share, or you're good at this point?
Sure, I'll share. I have been an international student from Canada overseas, and I've worked a lot with international students, and I think the issues are different. I know when I was overseas, that feeling of homesickness, that feeling of just not quite knowing where you fit in and where you belonged was really big, really big. And it then affects everything else. I also think, you know, as I look about this resourcefulness, that idea of knowing and understanding the system, I think that is a huge learning for our first year students coming into academia, but even for them, I think they have a lot more knowledge and understanding than international students would. They're at least coming from a Canadian context. And so something I'm trying to do in my teaching is be more explicit and clear about what are the resources available to students. And I think it helps both international and domestic students when we can be more explicit and clear in terms of that resource piece, but then also in terms of the academic culture, right? And that task and role clarity. That's something I've really latched onto over the last couple of years, and trying to be just a lot clearer with my expectation, recognizing there may be a language barrier, there's maybe a culture barrier. And so trying to just really distill things down and keep it simple and clear so students understand it. And it seems to be helping and improving what I'm seeing in terms of assignments and assessments and deliverables coming back to me. So it's really worked, I think helped me as an instructor, but also helped my students.
Thank you so much, Valerie, for sharing. I share this similar challenge in terms of academic context, because I might be taking 5 courses and each instructor might be expecting me of very different things. So sometimes I often feel confused jumping out of class, like, oh, do I do this thing right in class A? But I also feel like, okay, something I need to do in class A might not be something I need to do in class B. So there's really no one unified academic context. It's about our communication with our students. As Valerie beautifully said, like how we communicate with them, how we can helping them, also helping ourselves better understand, what are the expectations and how they can do, where they need to put their efforts in. So let's continue our conversation. Before that, I would like to share quickly, Camilo shared in the chat that as a PhD student, have to say that it is way different being a PhD than a master student. I have now a lot of freedom to work, but it could be dangerous if my management of my time is not wise. That's what I found annoying sometimes, because I have to ask the people around me, is this activity important? You can wait. Is it urgent? When you are studying in a structured schedule, when activities are planned by anyone else but you, it's easier because you don't have to decide by yourself what it comes first and what it's secondary. But you don't have so much freedom. The opposite is for PhDs. So having someone to help you navigate quiz you is helpful, but sometimes I feel a little bit lost regarding this. Yes, thank you so much for sharing, Camilo. This is also a challenge I shared. I remember in a conversation with my colleague/friend Yasmin, I think we both had 5 jobs when we were students. So we're trying to juggle really between the studies we have, the financial burden, time for sleep, and some time for relaxing. So that's also a very challenging thing. I guess that's why attending university is also an opportunity for us to grow as a person in terms of management and many other skills we need to be able to survive or succeed in the context. I think somebody else might put his hand up, and I think I lost you. Okay, so I'm going to pronounce your name. Sorry, is someone trying to say something?
Yeah, it was my hand up, and I just wanted to share, like, I really like this framework and all of it resonates with me, but I think I want to highlight the resourcefulness piece. So I've been an international student and I did my master's in the UK, and then I moved to Canada to do my PhD in Canada. So I've been an international student for a while, but I think that when you're a graduate student, the maturity to even advocate for yourself and the maturity to be able to sense that, okay, this is not what it should be, and then taking that initiative to find things that for resourcefulness to navigate the system and seek for help when you can. I think it's a bit different. While I understand that can apply to both home students and international students, I think the barriers that international students face are a bit more. And sometimes as you grow in your education, you become a lot more mature and you're able to sense those things faster and then take steps for your own well-being to ensure that you have the support that you need.
Thank you so much for sharing. Once again, I can't agree more with what you said, because I feel like I can relate to a lot of your experiences, because I was a former international student. So let's move on to have a further conversation in terms of how we can use this framework, or what might be the initial steps we can take as the beginners. Okay. So like I quickly mentioned, this is a wonderful framework. It has some enriching components. Because we only have very limited time in the session today, I can't really go in depth with all the components. So what I decided to do is to maybe share some initial steps for us to take that will help us include some key points, or to help us adopt some of the underlying tone of the whole framework. So I guess for me, I think the most important steps to take include, first of all, building a sense of orientation in terms of how we could navigate this learning context. It might be the physical one, maybe the online one, whichever one that applies to our context, and also develop a sense of belonging. We need to feel like we belong here, even if we're from different academic backgrounds or cultural backgrounds or linguistic backgrounds. We need to feel like we're welcome here, we can make contributions here, and I am a member of this community. And also another thing we need to do as educators is to find some way to reduce some language barriers, because language barrier or linguistic challenge is going to be a long-term challenge. So I would hope I can improve my English overnight, which is not going to happen, unfortunately. So there needs to be a phase for students to learn, to develop, to build more for their language ability. In the meantime, we need to find something to support them in their learning and development. Okay, so to be a bit more specific, when we talk about building a sense of orientation, one big piece is to bridge gaps in our different expectations of the course and of each other. We need to know that there will always be discrepancy in the expectations we and our students have about this course. Okay, I'm pretty sure most of us already know about the gaps that exist in our teaching and learning practices. I just want to dive a little bit deeper into this topic. And I think it should be fair for me to say all students, regardless of their backgrounds, beginning post-secondary studies, are expected to learn how to play a new game. So the winners are the ones who can find out the new rules quickly and comply well with the new rules. Okay. International students very often will not realize the rules have changed, because they oftentimes have no idea what they are stepping into in the new education system unless they are taught specifically. I think Jermaine just shared with us his experience in trying to figure out the new system and so much more. And I also would like to reflect on my own experience as a former international student. So when I was accepted into the graduate program in Canada, I only knew that I was going to a new country to study. I was excited, but I didn't really understand what that means or what new rules I had to abide by. Until I started my education, I started to figure out, oh, there's so much differences. And especially in my first semester, I have so much culture shocks in terms of my role and my professor's role and how we work together in each courses, which I can share a bit more later in the session. But in general, I feel very related with this research that most international students, like I did, will start out having expectations and use of behaviors that have served them well as learners up to this point. And their expectations and behaviors oftentimes don't align with what are expected of them in a new context because of the different cultural, educational, and linguistic backgrounds they come from. So therefore, I would like to also offer some more specific examples in terms of the gaps in our expectations. So for students, they may believe that to be a good student, they need to learn by listening, they need to take down all the notes and don't question my teachers, just be as respectful as I could. While from our perspective, we probably would want our students to, participate in discussions, think critically about the content I present in a class. We want them to develop critical thinking. And also, we may believe as good educators or good instructors, we will need to be a good facilitator. Okay, not really the sage on stage, but help them to be independent learners. While our students may have expectations of us in terms of, oh, my instructor or professor needs to be the authority on this topic. Okay, they need to know the right answer to my questions. If I have a question, they will always be able to answer my question, and my professor or instructor need to make sure I pass my exams. So some international students may believe if we are good educators, there is no reason they won't pass the exams. So those might surprise us, right? Because we've never heard of such a thing, and that's nothing we believed, okay? So international students' differences in academic beliefs, expectations, and behaviors, unfortunately, are often viewed through a deficit perspective that they're wrong or they're being ridiculous, and therefore they need to fully assimilate into this new academic culture or academic context. This deficit view of international and culturally diverse students, in fact, has a negative impact on the students and will lead them to lose self-confidence and make them always feel wrong, feel less competitive and less valuable in a class, which will eventually cause them to lose confidence, lose their belief in themselves, and develop a sense of marginalization or exclusion. I was one of the many international students who experienced a high level of self-disappointment and self-denial. I remember being so quiet and invisible in many classes I attended and felt so helpless, especially when my professor told me to stop asking her questions during breaks because she did not want to be unfair to other students. I did not deserve more help just because I was an international student. So that conversation was horrible. It was a very terrible feeling after I talked to that professor, and I wish no other international students will ever experience. It still hurts me whenever I recall this memory because I seriously questioned my eligibility of study in the graduate program, and I want to drop out because I was confirmed I wasn't smart enough, I wasn't good enough for the class, I had to drop out because I can't graduate or finish the course. It's a very struggling moment of my life, but I'm glad I survived, but the pain was real. I think it would make a big difference to me if my professor said, I understand you have more challenges because you are international students, and I'm glad that you approached me for help. So now that I learned being different is not wrong, okay? Something seems quote unquote unusual or unnatural in one context could be natural and valuable in other contexts. So in my vision of successful and equitable global engagement that we're trying to initiate or make a priority of our university, I sincerely hope that the diversity, international and culturally diverse students bring into our classroom could be appreciated and used as sources to enrich our teaching and learning environment instead of something wrong that is in need of redemption. So I feel obligated to advocate for cultural diversity at our university and in our communities. And I would also like to invite you all to be my allies in this endeavor, as it is indeed needs to be a collective effort. So thank you so much for attending the session and having this conversation with me. Let me check the chat. Stacy shared, I think this is such an important point because we often don't find out where we've made mistakes until we've made the mistakes. We don't know what we don't know. I guess it's also important for us to take the responsibility and own our mistakes, okay, to learn from our mistakes, and then we can do better in our future practices, or to really make our mistakes a teachable moment for us to grow as a professional. And Camila also says, good point, Stacey. Sometimes I hear this comment, you would have asked about that. And I think, how am I supposed to know that? I didn't even know there was such a thing to ask for. Yes, exactly. That sometimes our implicit bias, we always feel like, oh, once you are in my class, you should know. And oftentimes that's not the case. We need to teach them so they will know. So let's move on with our conversation. So I just shared one initial step is to bridge gaps in expectations. And what else could we do includes help navigate a new learning context, be it physical or like online or blended. So we need to help our students navigate the new learning context. To develop a sense of belonging, we need to create an inclusive and safe learning environment. So our students will feel comfortable to learn from each other, collaborate with each other, or even feel comfortable making mistakes and using our mistakes as teachable moments or learning moments. And also encourage intercultural interactions in class, which is a very challenging task for all of us. And to reduce some language barriers, some initial steps involves ensure accessibility of lectures and lessons. So UDL, Universal Design for Learning, might be helpful, but there's also a lot more we can do, and try our best to reduce as many language barriers as we could. Also knowing we may not be able to remove all the language barriers, our students also will need to learn and develop their English language proficiency as they learn from us the knowledge and skills. Okay, refer students to supporting units on campus. So there will be more help out there. So it's not our solo responsibility to help. There are many others, colleagues across campus, to also help our students with their needs and expectations. So this is a few initial steps for us to take. So I would hope by making a few small changes in our practice, we will be able to lead to big results in terms of supporting international and culturally diverse students. Okay. So I've been talking for a while. So I think it's time for us to do a brainstorming activity. So what I would like to invite you to do is to visit a Google Jamboard, which has 6 pages in total. So each page addresses one of the initial steps as I listed here. Okay, so you will need to brainstorm teaching strategies and post at least one strategy on each page. So for example, on page 1, you will post a strategy that helps bridge gaps in expectations. On page 2, you will post a strategy about navigating the learning context and so forth. So in total, we're going to post 6 strategies, 1 strategy per page. So I hope I made myself clear in terms of instruction, because I'm sharing my screen right now. I'm hoping my colleague Sandra will help me share the link in the chat, so you will be able to access the Google Jamboard. Okay, I would also want to quickly mention, maybe we can all start on a different page to avoid traffic jam on page 1. So please feel free to start with a random page. I think you're already doing that. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you so much for engagement and your contribution to this activity. We're going to end this activity in about 1 minute. So if you have one idea you haven't posted, please use this time to wrap up. And after 1 minute, we'll come back and continue our conversation. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. I've been checking all the strategies you posted, and I do find some of them are really inspiring. And I think I would like to even use some of them, even in the workshops. Thank you so much for your contribution. And I would like to get your attention back to the PowerPoint to continue our conversation. And we will go back to the Google Jamboard later in the session for you to have a further reflection and discussion. So before we start to identify which strategies may work the best for our own specific teaching context or disciplinary field, I would like to quickly summarize some of the key points in terms of the initial steps that hopefully will initiate another conversation between us in the session. So to bridge gaps in academic expectations, as you already mentioned many times, clear communication is the key. So we will need to, first of all, set clear course expectations, knowing what way we want students to do and to achieve in the course. And also, like you already mentioned, explain the expectations clearly, as clear as possible, and offer multiple offer multiple ways for the expectations to be assessed by students. Maybe we can share with them verbally, write them down in the course syllabus, or even put them in our OnQ course if we're using OnQ as a tool. So many different ways we can do it. And also another important point is to try to negotiate some of the expectations, if applicable, as a means to empower our students by sharing some leaderships with them at a level that you feel comfortable as the instructor. Okay, for example, I learned from my colleague who used something called a life happens ticket. So if students had an emergency or something unexpected happened, they are not able to hand in their assignment by the due date. So they are able to use the life happens ticket once in a term without being asked any questions. So which basically means I have the deadline for you to meet, but also I'm willing to offer you some flexibility, knowing life happens all the time. So that will be an example I can share with you. Please feel free to share any strategies you find useful in the chat, or keep posting on the Google Jamboards, so we can all learn from each other. So another thing is to be explicit about the expectations. It's helpful for us to understand what international students struggle the most with in their studies. Okay, so based on research, it will do international students great benefits if the following information is explained clearly. The first is teaching methods, how we teach, what are the ground rules of the course, how do we expect students to learn, and why it is important for them to do activities if we're using active learning strategies. assessment. So this is often where students feel the most pressure, especially graded assessment. So it's important for us to share the length, the format of the assessment with detailed information, also explain the criteria and how they apply. If English language proficiency will be graded, we need to explain clearly what will be assessed and what is the allocation of marks in this regard. So if English will be graded, then how much marks and how we want to grade the English proficiency. And thirdly will be the teacher-student relationships. I think a lot of you already covered those important approaches. It is important for them to know how they can address us, right, as their educators, what's our role, and more specifically, what issues are appropriate or inappropriate for our students to bring to our attention. Okay, so this is why it's important for us to have knowledge of the service units on campus, and then we will be able to refer our students to when they have such need. For example, we may have good intention to help, but we don't know much about how to renew their study permit because they're also not certified to provide a consultation on that topic. So it's the best for us to tell our students where to go so they'll be helped by the professionals. And some international students may grow attachment to us as educators. So they want to share some personal stuff. So we have to decide the boundaries. So where is the boundary? What other things I'm happy to help, but there might be other things I'm not able to help. So you will need to maybe talk to a counselor or maybe talk to others who will be able to provide them with better supports. And also another thing is how students can contact us outside of class, maybe through office hours or maybe by appointments, use emails, or maybe use your office numbers. And a lot of international students are not really sure what office hours is. So they might not feel willing to attend office hours. So it will be a lot helpful if we can be proactive and tell them what we can talk about in office hours. And encourage them to attend office hours. And lastly, but not the least, academic writing, as a lot of you already mentioned in our previous conversations. This is a whole package of issues related to writing structures, ways of thinking, critical thinking, issue of academic integrity. So those are topics worth our attention. So I have included a link to access a few recordings of a workshop series I developed that is specifically about cultural diversity in academic writing. So when you get the PowerPoint, if you feel interested, please feel free to check the recordings and to have a sense of how culture plays a role in academic writing in general. Okay. So to quickly go through how we navigate the learning context, I guess one easy step we can all apply is to make good use of course syllabus. Okay, I believe we all have different understandings in terms of how and why to use course syllabus. I've heard from a colleague of mine who said course syllabus is a very bureaucratic thing to do. I'm a bit curious to know how you feel about course syllabus and how we can make good use of course syllabus. So basic steps include reviewing the course syllabus on the first day of a class, or at least at the very beginning of the semester. I think course syllabus is a great way we use to communicate with our students, and we can use course syllabus to help them build an overall understanding of the course in terms of where the rules they need to abide by, or what are the rules they need to abide by, and where will be what will be the assessment, the criteria and how they can understand, what will be discussed or what will be talked about in this course. So I believe it's a good way we use to communicate with our students, and we should encourage them to read the course syllabus and whenever necessary, refer them back to the course syllabus for the important information. But I also realize for some students, they feel reluctant to read or read carefully about the course syllabus. Therefore, I want to ask a very quick question in terms of what strategies you might have used to help students read the course syllabus. I have one strategy I can quickly share, but before that, I want to hear from you in terms of what might be the strategy we can use to help them read the course syllabus. Scavenger hunt, yes, exactly. Thank you so much for sharing, Stephen. I really like the activity. Add more fun than just reading through the pages. Haley, would you like to share?
Yeah, I have an international student that I'm TAing who's luckily he's very assertive about asking questions and he's not shy about it. But sometimes the questions he asks are in the syllabus. So what I do is I pull it up and look at it with him, and I point out where in the syllabus the answer to the question is. So that way it's like I'm still answering the question, and I've made it really clear that I'm happy to answer questions and there's nothing wrong with asking, but then I'm showing him in his own resources where he can find the answer.
Thank you so much, Haley, for sharing with us. I think that's a very good strategy. I would like to share with my colleagues as well. I want to maybe pause for another quick second, just in case somebody else in our group has a good strategy to share. Okay, so the strategy I want to share within our group today is something I also learned from a colleague. So she actually inserted a secret code in the syllabus, and she's asking her students to read through the course syllabus and find the secret code in the course syllabus. If you find the secret code, so you will get a small gift, or you will get extra points or bonus point. So this is a strategy we might be able to use depending on your own context. And then another strategy I also learned is to develop a list with the whole class called questions not to ask the instructor, because the answers can easily be found in course syllabus. So whenever students email you for a question, if the answer can be found in the course syllabus, we can quickly remind them, oh, remember we developed a list together. So those questions, you go directly to the course syllabus. So hopefully you find them useful, and they might not be as helpful as well, depending on your context. So as we process, I would like to also hearing from you, maybe other strategies or maybe your thoughts about how to best use course syllabus. Okay. Now a quick summary of what we can do to develop, to help students develop a sense of belonging. Okay, the first part is create an inclusive and safe learning environment. So I also found a lot of good strategies you shared in Google Jamboard. So just provide a quick structure. What we can do is to get to know our students early in the class to build a meaningful and positive relationship. And some of you mentioned you can probably share some of your stories as a student and to help them understand, although I'm your instructor right now, I was a student, so I understand your challenges to really build a close relationship. So that's a very good strategy. And also create a positive climate to welcome questions, to welcome comments, but also remind our students the importance of respect and be careful not to engage in some inappropriate statements. So students will feel more willing to share, to speak up, or like I quickly mentioned, even making mistakes in a class and using mistakes as teachable or learning moments. And also develop an inclusive environment. by indicating the appreciation of different ways of thinking, being, and knowing, and also tell students, we're not learning the same. So I'm also willing to provide you flexibility in terms of assessment strategies or teaching instructions to make them feel like their diversity is valued and appreciated in a very general concept. The second part is encourage intercultural interactions in class. So this will be another topic we can probably use a whole workshop to talk about. Also in a very general outline, we need to, first of all, plan interactions because no matter how much we want them to collaborate, they probably don't want to work with each other. They feel more comfortable working with friends or working with people who they feel share a lot of similarity. So we do need to intentionally plan the whole interaction and also support interactions in terms of pre, during, and post activities, and also most importantly, engage with subject knowledge, meaning we need to help students learn from each other's prior knowledge, experiences, and cultural norms. So they will use what they've already developed as a source for learning, a source for sharing. So they make more relevant to the class. They feel they have something to contribute. So in a very general concept, those are the things we need to do. I want to do a group discussion, but I'm also very conscious of the time. So what I will do is my colleague Sandra will share a link in the chat, which will take you to a PDF. I've put together a whole list of strategies in terms of the initial steps we can take. And there's another handout you can use for your own use after the session in terms of identify one strategy you might want to use in your own practice. So before I close the session, I'm just wondering, is there any questions in the group today? Do you think there's anything you need a clarification or some comments you haven't had a chance to make? I would welcome some feedback from you as well. So this is a very broad and also complicated topic. So I hope at least I offered you some inspiration in terms of the new strategy you want to use or help you enhance your understanding of international students' challenges. If you are interested in this conversation, please feel free to reach out to me on the PowerPoint. You will have my email address, and I can also type my email address in the chat. So if you want to continue the conversation with me, please feel free to reach out to me. Okay, there is a question in the chat. We welcome to share those resources with other faculty members in our department who could not. Of course, of course. This session is recorded. So once the recording is up, you can also feel free to refer your colleagues to the recording if that helps. Okay, thank you so much for attending my session today. I hope we had a productive discussion together. I hope I make you feel welcome and inclusive in the session. Please feel free to provide some feedback that will help me do better in my future offering of the session and in my future programming. I hope to invite you all to be my allies in the endeavor of supporting international and culturally diverse students. Let's carry our conversation into the next workshop I offer or into many other conversations I'll be initiating in our community. Thank you so much for your coming today, for your contribution, for the conversation. I learned a lot from you. I hope you enjoy your lunch today and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you so much.